The Nexus Armada had conquered 17 star systems in less than a solar cycle. Their fleets moved through space like locusts, precise, relentless, unstoppable. The Zha'kar were the galaxy's finest military strategists, evolved over millennia to think in tactics and probabilities. Their neural implants calculated victory ratios before even firing a shot. But on this day, something broke their perfect mathematics. The distress call came from Kepler Station, a forward outpost on the contested border between the Armada's holdings and the humans' fragile claim to the outer rim. The signal was barely coherent. Fire, explosions, screams buried beneath static. The Zha'kar commander, Lord Velcarix, read the data stream with cold, practiced eyes. Pirate faction. Unpredictable. Dangerous. The station's complement of 240 Zha'kar soldiers should have been more than sufficient to handle the threat. Should have been. Send reinforcements. Velcarix commanded, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. The human colony on Kepler B will be compromised if that station falls. Unacceptable. His adjutant hesitated for only a fraction of a second. In Zha'kar military culture, an eternity. Sir, our nearest reinforcement fleet is still 7 hours away. The station has 7 hours of power remaining. Our ships cannot reach them in time. Velcarix's mandibles clicked, a sign of disappointment. Even humans, with their short lifespans and erratic emotions, understood the concept of inevitability. The station was lost. The mathematics were clear. What of the humans? He asked, though the answer was already calculated in his mind. The colony? The adjutant consulted his data. A civilian settlement. Agriculture. No military value. Perhaps 800 souls. Velcarix turned away from the display. There was nothing to do but accept the loss. The Armada would control the system regardless. 2,000 lives, Zha'kar or human, were negligible in the grand tapestry of galactic conquest. This was the way of war. Cold. Logical. Inevitable. What Velcarix did not know was that one human was already moving. Dr. Sarah Chen had been on Kepler B for only 6 months. She was a structural engineer, not a warrior. Her hands were calloused from rebuilding irrigation systems and reinforcing colony buildings against the planet's violent seasonal storms. When the distress signal blazed across the colony's antiquated comm system, she was in the greenhouse, checking on tomato seedlings. The colony administrator, Director Marcus, made the announcement in the central hub within minutes. We've lost contact with Kepler Station. The Zha'kar are sending help, but he didn't finish. Everyone understood what "but" meant. Everyone except Sarah. While the others descended into panic, gathering what belongings they could, hoping against hope that evacuation ships would arrive. Sarah was already in the server room. She pulled up the station's last transmissions, watched the timestamps, calculated trajectories and fuel burn rates with the same precision that came naturally to her engineering mind. The Zha'kar reinforcement fleet couldn't make it. And if the station fell, the pirates, desperate, unpredictable, driven by hunger and rage, would turn their weapons on the colony. On the 800 people she'd come to know as neighbors. On children. On people who'd sacrificed everything to build something new in a hostile galaxy. Sarah's fingers moved across the console, inputting coordinates. She had a shuttle. It was a transport vessel not built for combat, not built for heroism. It was built to move supplies between the planet and orbit. But it could move one person to a station that needed help. Director Marcus found her in the hangar bay, already running pre-flight checks. "What are you doing?" "Going up," Sarah said simply. "You're not military. You're not." "I know," Sarah interrupted. "But I'm the only one with the piloting certification who isn't needed here. And someone needs to." She didn't finish either. She didn't need to. Marcus understood. He watched her seal the shuttle hatch, watched the small vessel rise on pillars of orange flame, watched it arc toward the burning station above. In the command center of Kepler Station, Lieutenant James Okonkwo was running out of options. The pirate assault had been surgical and devastating. They'd hit the power generators first, then the communications array. Of his 240 Zha'kar soldiers, 160 were now dead or dying. The remaining 80 were entrenched in the lower levels, holding a perimeter that grew smaller by the minute. The pirates numbered only 40, but they had surprise, strategy, and most importantly, they had nothing left to lose. When the shuttle appeared on their sensors, Okonkwo's first thought was that reinforcements had arrived impossibly early. His second thought, as the manifest came through, was despair. One human, one civilian, one woman who'd only ever existed in the colony's medical records as a non-combatant. He watched her shuttle dock, watched her stride through the corridors toward the command center with the gait of someone who knew she was probably going to die. There was no fear in her face, just determination. "I've analyzed your power grid," Sarah said without preamble. "Your secondary systems are intact. If we reroute everything through the backup generators, we can hold the station long enough for your reinforcements to arrive." Okonkwo's Zha'kar eyes narrowed. "The reroute is in an exposed corridor. You would be vulnerable." "I know," Sarah said. "Where do I go?" What happened next was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a human choosing to walk into fire with a tablet and a wrench, to restore power to a dying station, to give soldiers, alien soldiers, soldiers from the race that had conquered half the galaxy, hope that they might survive the next hour. And when the pirates launched a counterattack, when they sent their strongest warriors down that exposed corridor, they found Dr. Sarah Chen blocking their path, standing before the main power relay, refusing to move. The Zha'kar watched from their defensive positions, watched this small, fragile human, who had never fired a weapon, who was not genetically enhanced, who had lived only 31 rotations in a civilization that measured lifespans in centuries, stand against soldiers bred for combat. She didn't win. She couldn't have won. But she held the line for 47 seconds. Long enough for the power to surge back through the station systems. Long enough for the lights to flare into existence. Long enough for the automated defenses to activate with a roar that shook the corridors. The pirates fell back. The moment crested. When the Zha'kar reinforcement fleet arrived, what they found was a station secured. What they found was a human woman in the medical bay, burned across one side of her body from plasma fire, but smiling. What they found was Lieutenant Okonkwo standing before Lord Velcarix, and speaking words that no Zha'kar had ever needed to contemplate. "She saved us, sir. A being with 1/100th our physical strength. With no military training. With only her mind and her will. She came to die for strangers." Velcarix stood silent. His 4 eyes moved to the woman on the medical platform. Sarah Chen. The name seemed inadequate. A label for a phenomenon. The data made no sense. The calculations were wrong. "Why?" Velcarix, Sarah, through her pain, managed to speak. "Because they're my neighbors. Because I could. Because—" She paused. "Because it's right. It's right." For words. A concept that had no computational value. That could not be optimized or calculated. That would result in zero strategic advantage. And yet, as Velcarix watched his finest soldiers, veterans of 1,000 combat operations, move to protect and care for this fragile human, he understood that his perfect mathematics had overlooked something. Something that the Zha'kar, for all their neural enhancements and tactical brilliance, had never been forced to cultivate. They had conquered the galaxy through strength and intellect. But the humans conquered through something deeper. Something that made allies of enemies. Something that inspired warriors to shield the vulnerable. Something that made death mean something. Velcarix turned to his adjutant. "Prepare a message for the human government. Tell them." He paused, searching for words adequate to the moment. "Tell them that Kepler Station stands in human territory as a gesture of respect, and that the Zha'kar Nexus seeks to open negotiations with a species that understands something we have lost." Sarah Chen recovered. She would carry the scars for the rest of her life. A life that stretched before her with new significance, new meaning. She would return to Kepler B and continue her work, but she would never again be merely a colonial engineer. She would be a symbol, a bridge between species. And when historians of the far future would study the moment when the Zha'kar Armada's expansion halted, When the galaxy's balance of power shifted towards something more like cooperation than conquest, they would trace it back to a single moment. To one woman standing in a corridor, holding a power relay, asking nothing but to do what was right. For the first time, the galaxy understood something that humans had always known in their bones. The greatest strength isn't measured in firepower or neural enhancement or centuries of military tradition. It's measured in the willingness to give everything for nothing in return but the knowledge that you did what was right. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If the story moved you, if it reminded you why we survive, not just to conquer but to care, subscribe for more human stories from the stars. Because somewhere out there, in the vastness of space, humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons. It's our hearts.